Hi guys, this is the first video in a series looking at unemployment, one of our macroeconomic objectives. Like with all our objectives, we're going to ask how we measure unemployment in the economy and how we define it. And then future videos are going to cover the causes of unemployment as well as some of the impacts of unemployment and the ways the government can deal with it. In this video, we're just going to be looking at defining unemployment and then measuring it. We've met unemployment before, so the basic definition should be familiar. So by way of starting, here are 5 different situations with different individuals in different scenarios. Pause the video and see if you can work out which of these individuals would count as unemployed. Here are the answers. Tom is not unemployed. He's not in the workforce. Remember, the workforce is those who are willing and able to work. We consider Tom to be economically inactive. Sue is unemployed. She can't find work. Will is a slightly hypothetical situation, but he's not in the workforce either. He's refusing to work. He's not willing to work. Amelia is a slightly strange case. She's willing to work in theory, but not at the going wage. We would consider her unemployed, but we'll come back to why that's a slightly controversial definition later. Sam is unemployed. He's willing and able to work. So remember, the key definition of unemployment is that it's the number of people who are in the workforce but not employed, not in work. And being in the workforce means people are both willing and able to work. So they're able to work, they're of working age 16 to 65, and they're also willing to work. They're looking for work. Here's a bit of context with unemployment in the UK over the past 40 or 50 years. Currently, unemployment at the time of recording is at a historical low, just below 4%, but we'd expect it to rise quite sharply during 2020 as a result of the coronavirus crisis. You can see that spikes have coincided largely with recessions, big spike in 2008 due to the financial crisis, and similarly in the 1980s, recessions as well as big structural changes in the economy, partially precipitated by government policy, led to an unemployment high of about 11.8%. That's the highest it's been in recent decades. We need to work out how this is measured though. How do we go about measuring unemployment? It sounds quite simple, but it's actually a little bit more involved, and we need to be able to explain how it works. There's 2 basic measures, the Claimant count, the labour force survey. And we can see that looking back over the same time period, they've given pretty different results. The Claimant count, which we're going to meet first, has historically been quite a lot lower than the labour force survey. And in 2009, 2010, we can see that that difference was quite substantial. The Claimant count is based on job seekers allowance. It's the number of people claiming job seekers allowance in the country. To claim job seekers allowance, workers have to be aged over 18. They have to be not claiming a pension, not in full-time education, living in the country, able and available to work, and working less than 16 hours a week. That last point is quite significant because it means that workers on 0-hour contracts, who we might strictly speaking consider to be employed, would be able to claim job seekers allowance. The Claimant count is a really advantageous measure of unemployment because it's really easy to collect. The government already has the data on hand. They can just count up how many people have claimed unemployment benefits in a given period. The disadvantage is that it's usually inaccurate. Not everybody claims unemployment benefit. If, for instance, you've been working in quite a well-paid job and you've got quite a lot of savings, the £74 a week that job seekers allowance gives you might not be worth it. It's still a lot of money, but consider also the embarrassment and the social stigma that people might feel from claiming job seekers allowance. As a result, the Claimant count is usually not quite representative of the true level of unemployment. For a more accurate measure, we look at the labour force survey. This is a measure of unemployment based on surveying households. It's usually more accurate, but it's much more time consuming, and so it only comes out once every quarter, every 3 months, and it's a couple of months out of date when it does come out because of the processing time. In the video description, or below this video, I put a link to an article summarising the main factors, the main facets of the labour force survey. Here are 3 questions to consider. pause the video and see if you can answer these 3 questions from the article that's linked below. Great. Here are the key takeaway points I took away. The labour force survey is run by the International Labour Organization, it's an international organisation, but it's administered by the Office of National Statistics. It's quarterly, every 3 months, and they've surveyed 38,000 households. They're randomly selected, but it's what's called a stratified random sample, which means that those households will be selected such that there's each different key demographic in the country is represented equally or proportionally. Now, households complete the survey for 5 different quarters. So once you've been surveyed, you're surveyed again over a number of periods. So every survey round, there's 20% replacement rate, 20% new households. And that means that there's a lot of survey data about the length of time people are unemployed. So one advantage of the labour force survey is it doesn't just provide a more accurate measure of the level or rate of unemployment, it also gives us a lot more data on things like the average duration of unemployment, the type of people who are unemployed, how many unemployed people there are on average per household. And that's really useful data for a government trying to work out policy. There's only a 60% response rate, however, which means that 40% of households who are asked to complete the survey decline. And that might introduce some potential bias in the data, because it might be that the households that are more likely to decline have certain features we're interested in. It might be that they're more likely to have unemployed or long-term unemployed members. We don't know. But if we're looking at that as statistical economists, that raises our eyebrows a bit. Overall, however, we view the labour force survey as much more accurate than the claimant count on the whole, because it uses so much more data and because it's so much more thorough. And so most estimates of unemployment we look at are based on the labour force survey, though they might be informed by the claimant count measure, particularly if we want to get that data out a bit more quickly. That's all we need to know with measuring unemployment. So by the end of this video, you should be really happy with the definition of unemployment, and you should be able to explain how it's measured. Well, think in a future video about how these topics apply in the exam.